The third session in our AI maturity series, 6 Pillars for Smarter Business. My name's Lauren Howes. I'm delighted to be your host today. Now, we're just going to give it a few minutes to let everybody join the session. And in the meantime, let me spend a moment or two just setting the scene. So as I said, this is the third of our 4-part series of webinars where we're exploring what it means to become a truly AI mature organisation. And across these sessions, we've been diving into our 6-pillar framework, which really helps organisations to move from experimenting with AI to really embedding it in a way that drives real business value. So our speakers today are Susanna Machka, who is our head of AI Foundations, and Fiz Yazdi, who's managing director of our consulting practice, Soprasteria Next. And I'm going to hand over to Fiz shortly. But before I do, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So first of all, this is a one-way webinar, so no one can see you or hear you. Feel free, relax, get a cup of tea, enjoy the session. And if you'd like to ask us any questions, and we really encourage you to do so, there is Slido, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. You can submit questions with your name or anonymously throughout the session, and then I'll pop back at the end to post your questions to our speakers. And finally, if you'd like to turn on closed captions, you can find that option in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So that's everything from me for now. Thank you for joining us again. Let's get started. Really pleased to hand over to you now, Fiz.
Thanks, Lauren. Hello, everybody, and welcome back, as Lauren said, to the third in our AI maturity series. It's great to see so many familiar names joining us again, and a really warm welcome if you're here for the first time today. So over the last few weeks, we've explored what it really takes to embed AI successfully into an organisation. We started with the foundations that make it possible. We've talked about the rapid acceleration of AI and what that means for businesses who want to move past the hype and deliver real, measurable value. Today, we're focusing on what sits right at the heart of that value and what, according to Harvard Business Review, 48% of organizations say is their biggest challenge in adopting AI: your data. Across every industry, leaders know data is a hugely valuable asset, but turning it into actionable, AI-driven insight is where many get stuck. Data can be vast, scattered, untrustworthy, or poor in quality. Without the right foundations, even the smartest AI solutions won't deliver real value. The organizations pulling ahead are the ones investing in getting their data ready. At Soprasteria, we know this better than anyone. For over 5 decades, we've helped organizations modernize, transform, and unlock the true value of their information. Digital transformation has always been about turning data into better decisions, and today, AI is simply the next chapter, albeit the paciest one, in that journey. So far in this series, we've looked at how to lay the groundwork for AI maturity. And one clear takeaway has emerged: without high quality, well-managed data, AI simply won't scale. That's why today's focus is so critical. And I can't think of anyone better to guide us through this than Susanna Machka. Susanna is an ambitious, authentic leader with a proven track record of building and scaling high-performing data and AI teams. She's led complex, high-impact programs across central government, transport, policing, combining a deep technical expertise with a clear vision for the future of the industry. Susanna won't thank me for highlighting this, but she was recently named one of Management Today's 35 women under 35, recognising her leadership and dedication to inspiring the next generation. We're thrilled to have Susanna with us today to share her insights on unlocking the true value of your data to drive AI success. So with that, over to you, Susanna.
Thanks so much, Fiz, for that introduction there. So yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really great to have you all here. I'm Susanna Machka. I'm a senior consulting manager with Soprasteria and head of AI Foundations. My job on a day-to-day basis is to speak to organizations across all different sectors and all levels of maturity about how they can bring AI into their business. Most of what I focus on with clients is helping them identify where they are currently and where they would like to get to in the future, and understand how we can start bridging that gap and building a roadmap to move forwards and make some progress. Today, I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite topics. We're diving into how enterprises can stop drowning in their data and start generating real AI-driven value. I always like to know what's happening in a session and in what order. So if you're anything like me, I'm sure you're also keen to know. We've got about an hour here today, so please do send me any questions that you might have that might come to mind during the session. I'm really keen that we can have a good discussion at the end as well, so do keep adding the questions in the chat there as well. So today we're going to look at why data, not AI, drives real value. We're going to focus on data foundations, and then AI with impact, how we can avoid POC, proof of concept, paralysis, a summary of the points that we've covered today, and then, as I say, we'll move on to a Q&A portion. I'd be really pleased if you leave today's session feeling like you've got some sort of practical steps that you can take away, that you know what the next move might be for you or your organization. The purpose is really to move beyond the hype around AI and demonstrate a practical, research-backed path to unlocking the value of data within your organization. So if you go away today feeling like you can do that, then I think, I feel like I've done my job here today. So just to kick things off, as Lauren and Fiz have mentioned already, this is the third in our series of webinars in our AI maturity series. Hopefully you've been able to join us for the previous two, or at least catch up on the recordings that we've got as well. As with the other webinars, we're guided here today by our 6 core pillars of strategy, compliance, governance and ethics, technology and infrastructure, data, expertise and culture. And also by our 9 guiding principles that you can see on the screen there as well. Today, I'll be focusing on data and how this is key to successful AI adoption. As you know, we've talked about data already, but sometimes I feel like we dive straight in to the middle of a subject. But I think it's really important that we establish a shared understanding of some key topics that we're going to be talking about today, so that we're all coming from the same place, we all have the same level of understanding. Some of you might be way past this point, but I just want to make sure that we're all of the same understanding and we've all got an equal opportunity to participate in the discussion here today. I know sometimes I'm certainly guilty of keeping questions to myself, and then you get to the point where you feel like it's too late to ask the question, you can't ask it anymore. So I hope this helps, and I hope that helps you avoid feeling like that here today. We can really only have useful and helpful conversations if we're all coming into this with the same level of understanding. I also think it's really important to make sure that we're keeping the barriers to entry low on this as well. It can often feel like with new technologies that there's an exclusive club of people who are in the know and who know things about certain technologies, and it feels like they rapidly raise the barriers up so that nobody else can participate in the conversation or bring an opposing opinion. For me, it's really important that that doesn't happen around data and AI, as it's so impactful to how we all live our lives nowadays, and it's certainly going to impact all of our futures. And really everyone deserves to have a voice and be included in this conversation. So hopefully this helps us get to that point here today. So starting at the very beginning, what is data? Data is generated by human action, ultimately, and collected through things like user inputs into a system, through sensors, login, calculations. It can normally be in the form of numbers, but it can also be words or symbols or an array of other things. But most importantly, it's something that has the potential to be made useful through analysis, which in turn can be interpreted to reveal patterns, relationships, trends, ultimately leading to meaningful information or knowledge. So what is information, and what is the difference between these two things as well? So for me, information is data that has been made useful or given a purpose. And that could be through analysis, through transformation, collation, calculation, any other form of processing. But information is processed, it is organized, and it is able to provide context and meaning and enable decision making. So if we have data as the raw format, information is that data that has been processed and organized and made useful. And the big question is maybe quite ambitious to try and answer this one here today, but what is AI? So for my background, I did my master's in data science a couple of years ago now, And as part of that, I had to do modules on statistics and probability. And that really taught me what AI really is under the cover of all the hype and the the cool articles that are out there at the minute and the use cases and things. But what is it really? And at its core, AI is a series of algorithms and with roots in statistics and probability. Statistics and probability is it's very low level. Say if you roll a dice 10 times, how many times will you land on a 6? That's probability, right? And AI algorithms are a very complex version of that. They analyze data to identify patterns and relationships, which can then be used to make predictions, classify new data, or generate new content. At its heart, it is sort of calculus and algorithms. And you can imagine for me coming into that master's level, the last time I'd done maths was my physics A level. So there's quite a big gap in the learning there. When the maths becomes more Greek letters than numbers, that's when you're in trouble, or at least I was. But that is what AI is underneath the hood, essentially. And what is an algorithm? So it's a set of instructions to be followed in calculations or other operations, and this applies both to mathematics and to computer science and programming as well. At its base level, it is the programming that tells the computer how to learn to operate on its own. And these algorithms work by taking in training data that helps the algorithm to learn. And how that data is acquired and labeled makes a key difference in how successful that AI is, how unbiased it is, how accurate it is, how reliable it is, all relies on the quality of the data and how it's labeled and how the AI is being trained on that. So hopefully now we're all coming at this from the same perspective. We all have a base understanding of the keywords and phrases that I'm going to be talking through today. So getting into the value side of things, for me, it seems like for too long, data has been viewed as a byproduct of doing business or running an organization. It's not viewed as an asset. And for me, it really should be viewed as an asset with value of its own. And we need to move away from thinking of it as something that is generated as a byproduct of our business and reframe it as something with its own purpose and its own value. Some organizations that I've worked with view the volume of data that they hold as a bit of a badge of honor. You go in and have conversations with them and they'll say, oh, we've got terabytes of data, we've got, so much data. But it doesn't really matter. The aim is not to see who can collect the most data. The value of data doesn't lie in how much you have. And we need to move from that mindset of volume to value and to view data as an asset in its own right that is treated with the care and attention like any other asset within your business, with a defined life cycle, rules, processes, procedures, and those sorts of things. Stanford's AI index showed that enterprises excel when they don't treat data as a byproduct. And why is this important? Jumping to invest in AI without first putting in the work to understand, structure, and maintain your data is essentially setting up for failure. Data feeds your AI software, and poor quality data will be hugely exacerbated by AI. Furthermore, if you don't understand what your data is telling you and what you have, where the gaps are, where the insights are, and what you're hoping to get out of the data, what are you really hoping to get out of your AI implementation? How can you know that without knowing your data? As much as we all like to think it is, AI isn't a magic wand. It won't fix your data. It will only amplify and increase your existing data issues, whilst also costing you a lot of money in the process. If we invest in AI without first investing in our data, the return on investment, the ROI, will simply never exist. And you can see here some of the research that sits behind this. So 78% of companies have invested in AI usage, but only a fraction of organizations report productivity gains. Many report less than 10% cost savings or less than 5% revenue lift, which is tiny really when we think about things, especially when there was an estimated 33.9 billion invested in generative AI last year and over 100 billion invested in AI as a whole last year. BCG analysis found that only 25% of companies are seeing any measurable return on investment from their AI investments. And this is, really not a great position to be in at all. So how can we avoid that? We've discussed that despite massive investments in AI in recent years, most organizations struggle to turn data into measurable return on investment. But what's important to note here is that the gap isn't about AI models and their capability. It's about how the underlying data is managed, how it's governed, how it's understood. So what will you stand to gain from getting your data foundation basics right, and why should you spend time and money on this? So it'll help you to better understand your business. It'll help you to define your strategic direction because you have the data to back up the decisions that you're making and understand where you'd like to move to in the future. It also helps you to understand the gaps. So it's perfectly fine to have gaps in your data. Everyone probably will, but it's important to understand where they are and understand the limitations that this might cause, or make a plan for how you'd like to fill those gaps. It's important to know that they exist and where they exist. It'll help you to modernize your estate. I've worked with lots of clients over the years who simply cannot upgrade and have a burning platform because they've tied all of their data into an old, now out of date system, and there is no migration path because they haven't kept on top of the data over the years. And it's a very difficult situation to be in. It's, of course, it's solvable, but it takes a lot of work. It also helps to build trust in your data. How often do you see people running macros and one person will run a calculation and get a 9, one person will run the same calculation and get 25, and then it's like, well, who's got it right? Which calculation's doing the right thing here? And that kind of thing really just erodes away the trust in data within an organization, and it becomes common knowledge within the business that, oh, you can't really rely on the data, you can't trust that data. And this damages the culture around it as well. So if you really want people to be able to use data to make decisions, to have trust in that data, there's a whole culture that needs to be built around it. So the data needs to, first of all, be trustworthy, but you need to help staff and people interacting with the data build their skills and build their confidence in this as well. And it helps you to secure the future. So it moves away from those burning platforms and gives you a defined roadmap for where you want to be in the future. You can have that vision of the type of organization, the type of business that you'd like to be. And sometimes it can feel very far away from where you are at the minute. But really understanding your data helps you to define that roadmap and take tangible steps to get to where you'd like to be in the future. Essentially, in order to deploy successful AI, organizations must redefine their data foundation as a strategic differentiator and a critical success factor within the business. It's no longer enough to say it's a technology problem and stick it in the corner. Data is now everyone's problem throughout the whole organization. You simply cannot do business without putting it front and center. So some more facts and figures for you here. 40% of respondents to a survey from TDWI found that their data foundation either cannot support AI or was struggling to do so, and half reported that their poor data quality and unclean data was hindering their AI efforts. Only 10% considered that their data foundations were AI ready. And this report from TDWI focused on how enterprises are modernizing their data strategies and architectures to meet the demands of AI, navigate economic uncertainty, and address the evolving need for unified, scalable data environments. I want to try and put into context what I'm talking about here. So I think most of us may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If not, it's essentially a visualization of human needs from the psychology school of thought. And what it shows here on the screen is that you have to have the basic needs before you can move up through the levels of the pyramid here. The lower level basic needs must be satisfied before the individual can move up the pyramid towards eventual that self-actualization, the fulfilling of their greatest self, their true potential, and that kind of thing. It got me thinking about how this is similar to data and AI and the pyramid that we can imagine there as well. So here you can see a similar one that I've created for data and an AI hierarchy of needs. And really what I'm trying to demonstrate is what we're talking about when we're talking about collecting data and storing your data and having the pipeline and the life cycle in place, doing the cleaning and the standards and things are equal to what we're seeing on Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. So collecting the data is equal to your psychological needs of breathing and food, water, shelter, sleep, all the very, very basics. So we have to get the data basics right, the bottom of the pyramid right, before we can hope to move up to the next stage and the next stage. And at the very, very top of that pyramid, equal to that self-actualization, greatest version of yourself, is AI, prediction, and deep learning. They're on the same level if we're thinking about it from this perspective. And you can't hope to achieve these things if you're not getting the basics right. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that resonates. I thought it was interesting just to bring a different perspective to how we view the importance of data within an organization. Another thing that it got me thinking about was that data has value, of course, but only if it's labeled, organized, accessible. So I thought data is really like that box of photographs that you have maybe in your house, maybe in your parents' house. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. It's a big cardboard box full of pictures from the last like 50 to 70 years probably, back when everyone had film cameras. And it's got some wonderful pictures and wonderful memories in it, but you can't appreciate it because it sits in a box in the cupboard or in the attic, and you don't get any value or any benefit from it. And your data is essentially like this box. It's filled with potential, but really unusable without any structure behind it. And the AI can't work magic on that chaos. You only get the benefit once you go through the photographs and put them in an album or frame them and put them on the wall. And an MIT tech review found that 90% of enterprise data goes unused. There's a huge amount of potential there that isn't being tapped and isn't being explored. And I think most of the time organizations don't even know what data they hold. It can be really interesting to challenge your data with a question and see if it's able to answer it once you explore what's there. I've talked a lot about data foundations and said how very important they are and that you need to start there. So you might be thinking, what are they and where should I start? And the answer is start right here with this. This is an end-to-end view of a data transformation journey that we've created within Soprasteria. And I think it really encapsulates the journey and all the essentials that you need to go on with your data foundations journey and how to use data well within your organization. I find this framing works really well. It gets people thinking about where they are, the progress that they've made, where they'd like to be, any gaps, anything that they might have missed out on their journey. And you may disagree with this. That is completely fine. Part of the joy of this is generating conversation and getting people to think about what it means to them, if they agree with it, if they change anything around it. But for me, it's really important to be pragmatic about what this journey could or should look like. Of course, it starts with things like setting the mission and the vision for your data. So the real basics of what you would like it to do for you within your organization. And then this naturally leads on to things like your data strategy and your objectives. Data discovery is a great way of looking at where you are now, what your data landscape looks like, the quality of the data, any gaps in the data, and also doing those visioning workshops around where you would like to be, what the ambition is to be in the future. And once you know those two things, you can look at the gap between them and you can start to map how you can get from point A to point B. As part of this, you have your defined outcomes and benefits as well. Impact assessments are really important here. You'll have your transformation roadmap, and then eventually at the end of that phase, you're looking for a business case that you can take forward to achieve funding or achieve buy-in from the rest of the business. The next stage you'll notice splits into two parts, equally important. Along the top, we have the more technical side of things like data models, data standards, processes, procedures, and data engineering. Along the bottom, not to be forgotten, is the more people and culture focused side of things. So your change strategy and plan. It's a huge change for people within an organization when you move to be more data focused and data literate, and that shouldn't be forgotten. It's really important to spend the time on helping people to come on that journey with us. We need to look at the organizational structure that would sit behind it as well. People need to have the roles and responsibilities that support your new data strategy within that. Team skills and development as well, and data literacy, all very important, and all leading into data governance and policies as well. The next stage is probably where people more typically think of when they think of data. So it's things like your visualization, business intelligence. And then the last section is really where everyone is rushing to get to, which is the artificial intelligence, predictive analytics side of things, insight-driven decision-making, forecasting. It's really important to include in here as well the benefits and value measurements. So this should have been captured throughout the process so that you can monitor whether you're on the right track, whether you're achieving the goals that you'd like to meet as well. So I've pulled together what I would say is a bit of a checklist for impactful AI. So in my experience of working with clients on their data and AI strategies and their implementation, these are things that have the biggest potential to make an impact to that implementation within your organization. Getting your data foundations right will help you to do all of these things. So you need to understand your why. Why are you doing it? You know, what's the motivation behind the work that you're doing? Speaking to users is so incredibly important, and that'll help you to define the problem that you're looking to solve. Understanding your data, as we've already discussed, and defining the data requirements, the foundation that's behind them, defining your evaluation and success criteria as well, so that you have a really impartial and defined view of how you can assess your AI implementation. Exploring the solution options. Please don't come with the technology first. That is absolutely the worst thing that I see people do, is buy technology. So please start with that. Start with the data and the people, and then move towards the solution options at the end. And then, of course, there's the implementation there as well. Because really, at the end of the day, data is generated by people, whether that's your users or your customers, and is essentially a direct reflection of human behavior, how they interact with your business or within your business. And speaking to users is what will help you to better understand your data. They're almost two sides of the same coin. These two things have to coexist in order to be successful. The first thing you should always do is understand the why, and then the people and the data will help you in understanding what that looks like and how that can be implemented within your organization. I wanted to touch on proof of concepts, POCs. It's something that comes up time and time again. People get stuck in the POC phase, calling it POC paralysis. Experimenting is great and is really important, but so many clients come to me and say their key challenge at the moment is getting out of that POC phase. Too often I speak to clients who have bought the technology, bought the latest and greatest in AI software, and are looking for a problem to solve with it, which, if when you think about it, is really similar to picking up a hammer and walking around your house looking for something to fix. It's not a great way of approaching things, right? So these are some of the key challenges that I'm seeing with clients at the moment when they come to us for help. It's when they haven't started with the users first and haven't given that attention to understanding user journeys and pain points. There's miscommunication and there's misunderstanding. Industry stakeholders often misunderstand or miscommunicate what problems need to be solved using AI. This can be due either to a lack of understanding or lack of understanding around the technology or the problem itself. Ignoring the data, I've said this already, but there's no AI without data, and poor quality data will lead to even more poor quality AI. It will multiply the poor quality of that data. Similarly, many AI projects fail because the organization lacks the necessary data to adequately train an effective AI model. It needs a lot of data in order to train it effectively. Overlooking the fundamentals, so not looking at the infrastructure that you have within your organization and whether or not it can support an AI deployment as well. And that's not just technology infrastructure, that's also culture, change, learning, everything that sits around it. Already mentioned, but purchasing the latest and greatest in technology and then looking for a problem to solve afterwards. And then getting stuck in that POC phase because no business value or use case was defined upfront. There's no specific problem being solved, and some of you may have experienced yourselves. It all starts to feel a little bit directionless when you start moving forward on a project with no use case and no outcomes attached to it. A lack of ownership can also contribute to this one as well, if you haven't got anyone specifically owning the project and the outcomes. So what can we do about it? How can we avoid it? Start with your users first. Understand what they do on a day-to-day basis and what their real pain points are. Don't assume that you know what your users are thinking and how they're feeling. It might show up something completely different to what you thought the issues were. You should be able to communicate what you're trying to do and what the outcomes are really clearly. If you can communicate it to an 8-year-old and make it make sense, it's probably a good understanding that you have of it. If it's too complicated, then you maybe need to take another look at it and try and define it more clearly. It's something that should be able to be shared across your organization at all different levels of involvement and seniority and experience and make sense. It prioritizes good data again, putting the focus on the data foundations and the upfront work in that. It's set in fundamentals, so it understands the limits of the infrastructure within the business and what changes might be required in order to manage and maintain AI models. It's inspired by problem solving, so it's all based around the problem that you're trying to solve, and you have tangible ways of measuring the benefits around that as well. It's a proof of concept with a purpose. It has ownership, it has business value, it has outcomes. At the end of the day, the purpose of AI is to make life easier, make sure that you know the problem that you're solving with it. Just to summarize what I've covered here today, data foundations are absolutely key to future success, not only from an AI perspective, but across organizations as a whole. Hundreds of millions has been invested in the latest AI technologies, but very few companies so far have seen any sort of significant return on investment. This isn't due to gaps in the technology or the lack of capability of AI models. It's generally due to running before you can walk with AI models. So rushing to buy the latest technology and implement AI when the data foundations aren't correct, when you haven't done the basics with your data. Data foundations are where you should initially focus your time and money to ensure that return on investment in the future with AI implementation. And data within an organization should be treated as an asset, not a byproduct of doing business. Don't leave it hidden away in a cardboard box and expect magic when you implement AI on top of it. Remember the hierarchy of needs, the pyramid. Don't try to reach that self-actualization before you've got the shelter, food and water that you need. Don't try to implement the AI before you've got your data basics in terms of the standards and the cleaning and the processes, pipelines, all of those sorts of things. And think about the data journey as well as to those tangible steps that you can take to move closer towards where you want to be. User needs and data foundations should form an absolutely key part of your checklist for impactful AI. And you can try to move through your proof of concept paralysis by deeply understanding the problem that you're trying to solve before investing the time and money in AI. So hopefully I've met the objective that we set out at the beginning. You now feel like you know how you could move forward in your AI journey. If you're still feeling stuck, please do drop me a message. I'm available on LinkedIn if you'd like to have a chat about where you are with your organization. But I really hope that you've all taken something away from this today. And thank you very much for your time and attention as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fiz. Thank you, Susanna. Such a brilliant session. So we really encourage you to take our AI maturity assessment. It takes less than 10 minutes, and from that you'll get an AI maturity score and advice on how you can improve. And whether that's you're just getting started or indeed you need that advice on how to accelerate your AI usage, we can help with that, and the report will really help you to identify the areas of improvement. So a link to the AI maturity assessment can be found in the Slido, which is just on the right-hand side of your screen. And we'll also email it over to you after the session as well. So we've had a few great questions and comments, which I'll go through in a moment. Thank you to everybody who's submitted so far. Just a quick reminder though, if there is something you'd like to ask, please just drop it into the Slido on the right-hand side of your screen. But let's dive into some of the questions and comments now. So first of all, Natalia and Hermant have asked about recordings and whatnot. So yes, we've just shared in the chat some of the previous 2 recordings that you can find, and we have recorded this session and we'll add that as well. And then once the series is over, we'll share a lovely a summary and overview of all of the 4 talks with everybody who has signed up across the weeks. So first of all, first question for you, Susanna. So Julia has asked, how might I measure the ROI of an AI implementation?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so important to measure these things as well. And that is one of the reasons why the data foundations are so important. We have to be able to understand the starting point before we're implementing anything, but particularly AI. So you need to have the data so that you can look at where you are at the minute, whether that's processing times or the amount of cases that you're processing, whatever it might be, whatever suits your business and whatever you're trying to improve. But if you don't currently have access to that data, you need to find a way to pull that data out. So I was recently working with a client who have a very old and creaky Oracle system, and we were looking at how we could pull out data on processing times and volumes of cases, and they said, well, we don't have that. But once you look at the tables and things that are held within the Oracle database, you can look at, okay, actually, so if we take this away from this number, we'll end up with the processing time, or we'll end up with the amount of cases that are processed. So even when it doesn't seem initially obvious where to get that data from, there's normally ways and means of doing it once you understand the data and the structures that you have within databases. So understand your starting point. And then you need to work out things like, obviously, how much the implementation is going to cost, not just in software costs, but in people, time and expertise that you need to implement this as well. And then factor that into how long it's going to take to implement. And that'll help you to come out with an ROI or a projected ROI. It's always good to have ranges with these things as well, I think, in terms of best case and worst case scenario, just so that you can cover your bases on that one.
Super, thank you. So Sharon has just asked about whether there is a cutoff date for filling in the assessment. No, Sharon, there isn't at all. We encourage you to do it as soon as possible, because obviously then you get your report and you can start working through those recommendations. But no, there isn't a cutoff date, so do not fret. The next question is around, what is the best way to get started with establishing data foundations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And hopefully from the data transformation journey, you can see how we approach that. I'd always recommend starting with the ideation side of things, so your mission and your vision, and you can keep that quite high level, but attainable and measurable for where you'd like to be with your data. For some reason, so many clients that I speak to say that they want a Tesco club card model. It seems to appeal to everybody. So, whatever that vision is of where you'd like to be, I think because obviously it tracks so much data about customers and gives so many insights, obviously not applicable to every industry, but that sort of model where you get such personalized insights into your clients is really valuable, right? But start with that mission and vision. Maybe you want the equivalent of a Tesco club card, and then break it down from there into what's the strategy that sits behind that. What do we need to do? What are the objectives? I'd really recommend doing a thorough data discovery as well. So this is a service that we offer as a data discovery, which can be really short and sharp, so between 6 to 12 weeks, where you look at where you are at the moment with your data, what the current landscape is, where it's stored, what are your core applications, what's the quality of the data, and then also looking at the people perspective. How do people feel about data within your organization? What are the literacy levels, things like that, and where do you want to be in the future to achieve that club card model or whatever it might be. And then you can build your roadmap from there, where you would like to be in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in 5 years' time, and constantly make progress on that roadmap, because it feels huge, right? To say we want to be, the next Uber in the next 5 years, it's massive. And what's the roadmap for getting there? But once you start breaking it down into tangible steps and measuring your progress, not only do you feel like you're making tangible progress, but it gives you quite a lot of confidence as well when you can look at the figures that sit behind it and see that you're improving and see that you're starting to make a difference. It helps with the motivation throughout the project as well, I find.
Love that, Susanna, because it can seem overwhelming sometimes. So breaking it down, really, really good advice. Okay, so Julia has asked, do you think the hype with AI will continue?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I hope I don't sound disparaging about AI, because it is what I do on a day-to-day basis. But I really like to try and give the pragmatic view on it. We're not here to sell you the latest and greatest technology. It's not the way we do business here. So I like to try and be pragmatic about if it is the right thing for an organization, and maybe it is, and maybe it isn't sometimes. So I think it's hard not to get caught up in the hype at the moment. On LinkedIn, there's so many posts. I think it's something like 80% of the posts that you see are all about AI or generated by AI in some cases, especially Gen AI, ChatGPT, things like this. There certainly is a lot of hype around it, but if you've seen the Gartner hype scale, where you see things going really high, a lot of hype at the beginning, and then they start to drop down. I think it's called the trough of disillusionment that they fall into. And then they start to take off again into a plateau where they become useful and actionable. And I think we're certainly starting to maybe fall down into that trough of disillusionment where people are, using ChatGPT and saying, oh, it didn't really give me the right answer, or it made things up and it hallucinated, or it wasn't that reliable, it wasn't that interesting. And now that people are getting a chance to play around with it themselves, it's maybe not quite meeting expectations because of all the hype that's been there. So I think really the most useful place to be is to be into that trough of disillusionment where everyone says it's rubbish and it's a waste of time, so that we can come out and find those real applications that are useful and valuable. So yeah, I think I'll be quite pleased when we get to that point.
You'll be pleased when we're through the trough.
Yes.
So just to reiterate, so we have been recording each of the sessions, and they are available on our YouTube channel. So we won't be sharing the slides individually, just because then you don't get Susanna's lovely narrative that she's spoken throughout. But this session is recorded and we will add it to our YouTube channel along with the other recordings after the session. So we've got a question from Debbie. Are there AI-driven tools that will help organize your data to easily establish a structure or data warehouse?
Yes, absolutely there is. So you can use AI to assess and structure your data, which is a great tool because it's a lot of hard work and energy to do these things manually, especially if you've got a lot of data. So there are AI solutions that exist out there that will help to go through your data and do things like find duplicates or suggest duplicates, suggest things that may be spelling errors, things like that, and pull them out for you. I'd always suggest designing your own data model to sit within the data warehouse because it's very specific to how you do business, the questions that you'd like to ask of your data, and how you'd like to build on it in the future as well. So I'd always suggest that you design your own data model, which is how the core bits of information within your business interact with one another and how you'd like to report and things like that. I would always suggest caution with these things, that you have a human in the loop, obviously checking what's going on. You can, it's fairly drastic, but you can get to a thing called model collapse, where you have a model on a model on a model, and then the whole thing falls down. So just make sure that there's a person checking this and looking for the validity and how accurate it's been. But it can certainly save you a lot of time and energy if you use AI to do things like that. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So that was the last question actually from Debbie. If anybody else does have any questions that they think of after the session, just fire them over email to us, and Susanna, I'm sure, will be happy to answer those. So just another thank you from me again today to Fiz and to Susanna. If you've signed up for this session, if you're with us right now, you are automatically signed up for the rest of the series. So that means that you'll have the webinar for next week's final session, which is where we're going to dive into the culture pillar from our maturity framework with Jo Martin. You'll have that already in your calendar. So we look forward to seeing you at the same time next week for the next session. Goodbye for now.